Today we're going to talk about things that you can put through your airbrush. I'm Warwick from Harder and Steenbeck, and these are our need to know basics. Now, there's a common misperception among a lot of modelers and hobbyists, and that's mainly who this video is directed at, that you couldn't or shouldn't put primers and varnishes through your airbrush for fear that they're going to somehow clog it up, because they're generally regarded as being heavier paint products than color. Now, this couldn't be further from the truth. There's actually some really good reasons why you should use the airbrush to apply primers and varnishes. Essentially what it is the airbrush is really good at applying extremely finely metered coats of paint. Now, when you think about what you're buying when you buy a model, you're buying something that's been very carefully constructed and molded to give a lot of fine surface detail. And the very last thing that you want to do when you start putting paint onto that is to lose any of that surface detail. Now, if you put a primer on with a rattle can, or if you put it on with a brush, there's a real danger that you are going to lose a degree of that detail. When you put it on with the airbrush, you can put the coats on extremely finely, very carefully metered, so that you do not lose any of the surface detail in your model. That's a really valuable reason to choose the airbrush as your tool to put primer down. Just make sure that the primer is appropriately thin to go through the airbrush. Very easy way to figure that out. Always use the thinner that the manufacturer supplies for their primer, and make sure that if you dip something into that paint, when you take it out, the paint will drip off it without any elasticity on the drip. That's a good way to know that it's thin enough to go through. Another way is to make it the same sort of thinness as milk. That's a great description. That's pretty useful in knowing that you've got it set up correctly. When you look at varnishes and things, it's the same sort of thing really. You don't ever want to over apply something to a model. You just want to put enough on that it does its job. You don't want to have any collecting and recesses, and this is a danger that you get with rattle can or brush applications. That is just really not something that the airbrush suffers from if you're careful in the way that you apply it. So those are two really good reasons to use the airbrush, not only for your color applications, but also for your priming and for your varnishing. With varnishes, people are sometimes worried that they're not going to be able to clean it out of the airbrushes, because varnish is known for being really tough. That's why you put it on. And so here's the tip to make sure that's never a problem for you. If you're concerned that the varnish may be hard to clean, put it on something else, test cleaning it off before you put it in the airbrush. The other thing obviously is the general rule is that you never allow anything to dry in your airbrush. As soon as you're done with it, get it cleaned out of there, even if it's just a quick flush before you come back to it later. As long as you stick to those rules, you're going to be absolutely fine priming and varnishing with your airbrush. One last tip I'm going to leave you with: when you want to practice with your airbrush, you don't necessarily need to use the paint that you're going to use when you're pursuing the activity that you really want to pursue with the airbrush. Sometimes when you want to practice, you just want something that flows and flows and flows and flows, and you don't need to think about anything other than working on your technique. A great medium for that is food coloring. It'll never dry in the airbrush, it'll never clog, and you can paint onto paper for as long as you want to work on your trigger technique. So it's just a really easy way of practicing with the airbrush for as long as you'd ever like to do it for. Do subscribe to the channel, and I hope you enjoy coming back for more of these tips from Harder and Steenbeck Airbrush.